Hey guys, didn't see you over there. But welcome to PACE 2019. I'm Lim, I'm centered with the panel right now, and this is Dangers, I think.
What is going on? It is indeed Dangers. How are you, LilKirb?
I'm doing pretty well. Setting this up was obviously a little bit of work, but I'm pretty hyped to see these matches. Seeing Curbs and Chaos now race live.
Absolutely. I cannot wait to see what these guys have in store for us. It should be a very exciting match between all four of these competitors who have worked very hard to get here. So,
oh, Jesus.
Very definitely exciting stuff. So, it's good to be here as well, representing GSA for the commentary here. And I look forward to watching these races come down to the wire, I think. So.
For sure, and actually, I mean, let's talk about Chaos for a second. Chaos currently the world record holder of this game. And he's been going like crazy. I mean, this guy got sub-hour and he didn't stop there. Like, no. I think he's like addicted to the category at this point. Like, he actually hasn't stopped at all. He's still playing this game every day for like 8 hours, practicing new strats, adding stuff, and I don't know, he must be addicted at this point.
Absolutely insane levels of commitment we're talking about with Chaospringle, you know, streaming for probably 5 to 6 hours a day, doing nothing but these any percent runs, and then of course the behind the scenes, he's like, nobody practices as much as this guy does, and even, you know, observing him here at PACE on the monitors, he goes with it. He's one of the only runners to kind of implement this very cool modification to the game that's being implemented by ESPA. He's kind of done some really good work with this game recently, where you can kind of transition the game through a warp or something like that and revert the moons back to their original state. And like if there is a way to make this game, you know, a speed game and make it in a way that we can optimize, he's taking care of it. He's on it. Yeah. Chaos does go the mile, and you know, we have a couple of runners here that have some sub-hour times, but Chaospringle has 5. So.
And let's look at these very exciting stats right now. Nykorida with 0 wins. I can't believe it. He's first anyways. I mean,
how does he do it?
This actually makes sense because I think this is actually technically the way they kind of like qualified to get here. Strabos being technically the 4th seed to actually get here, but the bracket is obviously fully reset. And let's actually get quickly into the point system of Odyssey, how this is all going to work, because we are kind of going back to the regular season way of handling things.
That's right.
So we changed it up a little bit, so let me explain it to you guys. So if you win, you get 60 points straight up in your face. Those points are yours. Nobody can take them away from you. And there's 30 more points up for grabs. So depending on how much you win by, you get more or less of this 30-point pool. And it actually goes down to 5 minutes now. So if you win by 5 minutes, for some reason, you'll get 90 points.
That's right. And it is kind of different from the way that the regular season was going. We had an extra point that was kind of given to you just for losing. That is kind of done away with now. Essentially, if you place within that 10 seconds of the first place winner of the race, you will take home all 30 points. If you are later than 5 minutes, you will get absolutely nothing. So it is kind of, you know, the points are divvied out based on how you perform, and I think that's going to be really important here. So, you know, even if you lose all of your matches, if somehow the last place person manages to win one and then lose dramatically, you still have a chance at coming back and winning and making it on. But it's really hard to say. So.
All right, we got a quick glimpse at the stats right there. Curbs with a pretty amazing 100% nut clip ratio. This is going to be big for this setting. Like, you don't want to miss nut clip on a race like this. This is where the stakes are high. You don't want to really mess up. Nut clip Chaos actually with the lowest snowdram percentage in this league. I think this was mostly due to his first race, but give it up for these guys. Chaospringle versus LilKirbs14, race number 1 of Odyssey here at PACE 2019. And let's see what these guys are up to.
We are off to the races. These guys getting into the zone. And you know, something very fascinating about Super Mario Odyssey speedrunners versus a lot of other streamers in general is that, you know, it's kind of neat that Super Mario Odyssey speedrunners don't really show their faces very much. So very, very cool to see some of these guys for the very first time. We see LilKirbs in the bottom right corner here for probably the first time for many of you. But yeah, it's very fascinating to see how this kind of live scenario is going to play out. See how these runners pace themselves in a situation where all the eyes are really on them here.
Yeah, these guys definitely shaking through the stage right now, which is obviously something that we actually have to do throughout the entirety of this game. People shaking their controller maniacally to actually get the maximum speed off of these roads. Curbs actually taking 2 early bonks right here. Not the biggest deal at all. This is only Cap Kingdom, but is able to get into first person here in time to cut off some time of that bridge cutscene. But I think Chaos is in the zone. He's rolling through the stage now, approaching the Cap Kingdom tower.
And taking an early lead here. Now, the first trick of this game that is kind of definitive and a little bit tricky to master is this left side jump coming. As soon as they get out of this cap tower, they're going to be trying to perform a particularly tricky, you might even call it a trick jump per se. So you're going to see Kaos, instead of taking the intended ramp on the right side, he's going to be going onto the left side and doing a very precise set of inputs here to get up over the top of this railing and nailing it flawlessly. LilKirbs in behind him. And he's actually going to be missing the trick, so he's going to have to back it up with a quick spin pound. No issues there.
Okay, very good backup by him, though, being able to not actually stop at all. He was going for like a really quick backflip off of that little top hat to be able to still get to the topper fight. That's not going to be the biggest deal at all. We've seen actually big swings in Cascade recently. We're going to be looking at that chest clip, especially once we get into the later portions of that kingdom. So even though Kaos was able to get a pretty solid lead right off the bat, that definitely doesn't mean anything in this game.
Anything can really happen. We are only 2 minutes in. Kaos showing a very solid start. You know, being one of the most consistent players in this game, that does not surprise me. LilKirbs trailing just a little bit behind. Not a big deal. You know, perhaps, like I mentioned, this is probably the first time that we're seeing LilKirbs' face for the first time. And, you know, that might take a little bit of adjustment in a live setting.
Yeah, and I mean, there's obviously people all around. You'll hear the commentators live potentially, so that obviously changes things up a little bit. But Kaos right now approaching first moon skip. He is going to be going for the wall jumpless version of this one. You actually skip the first moon entirely with the strategy. This is a 1.0 exclusive trick where you skip the first moon. Usually it seems like that first moon is something you have to pick up no matter what, but in this version you're able to kind of squeeze yourself below this invisible wall, being able to move towards the boss fight here. And this boss fight will be activated. This is the version exclusive part of the trick, and Kaos is going to be fighting Madame Brood here. Now he's obviously going to be going for these backflips here to set up Cappy in a position where he'll be actually hitting the chain jump on the top. So the chain jump loses his top hat, and then he can capture this one pretty much immediately. Let's see if Kerbs is going to be able to get the same strategies, gets the cap throw and gets the captures as well. And Kaos is going to be off to the ending of Cascade Kingdom. The ending of Cascade Kingdom is probably one of the most underrated portions of the run. You really want to get that chest clip. Chest clip actually has been losing runners a huge amount of time before. This is the specific, what we like to call moon clip, where you basically backflip into a moon while throwing Cappy. Pretty much at the second Mario is upside down, that will allow you to clip out of bounds to skip a little bit of a detour.
All right. So going into the second part of Cascade Kingdom, they're going to grab a couple quick moons just so that they are ready to go and fulfilling their moon requirements. The very unique thing about this game as a speed game is essentially that in order for us to progress to the next kingdom, we need a minimum amount of moons. So that's why just after this boss fight, we're going to be trying our best to collect those as fast as we can before we can progress on. Very different from something like Super Mario 64, for example, where, you know, all you need is a maximum, and once you've gotten to that maximum, you can progress through the game. This one, each kingdom has its own maximum.
Kerbs not being able to get the chest clip right there. Kaos was able to do that pretty nicely. So he's actually on a really good cascade entry. We are looking at a fade-out time of 5:09, which is considered to be pretty decent. Not even decent, that's considered to be pretty good. So he's doing pretty well in this early game right now.
Absolutely. Anything sub 5:10 is exactly what you expect from those kind of PB pace runs that these guys are on a daily basis. So Kaos still really showing some strength here. LilKirbs a little bit faltering at the beginning here, but 5 minutes in, there's still a lot of time to make up.
Yeah. Going into the specific meshing, there's actually a certain specific part about it. It looks like Kaos actually, he's popping off right there on camera as he got fast action guide skip. He's definitely feeling it right now. This is what we like to call the way of skipping the text relatively quickly. It seems like he's happy about this one.
Yep. Showing that trick. LilKirbs looks like he got the fast action guide. A little approving nod there. So essentially, it can be very hard to tell, especially to an untrained eye, but there is a faster way of skipping that kind of action guide dialogue, and basically trying to mash through it is one of the best ways to do it as a beginner, but these guys have both nailed it down here. So entering Sand Kingdom, and in my opinion, this is where the technical side of this speedrun game really kind of comes to a head. There are a few very technically precise tricks that you can pull off and you can kind of execute in this kingdom that if you miss, you lose quite a bit of time. So these guys are obviously going to be hoping to execute those flawlessly.
I think it's worth pointing out that there is technically a faster route to approach this kingdom. It requires some very, very fast movement, especially throughout the later portions of the kingdom. It saves around, I guess, 4 seconds overall, but it's really, really hard, especially, I mean, the pressure is already going to be high in a live setting like this, and doing that in a race setting where every race will matter. I can definitely appreciate that these guys didn't push themselves to go for the specific called late crate route, where you get a moon from a crate later on. They'll be going for the original sand route, which is hard enough as it is, as Kaos comes up at the dram strat right here. This is what we like to call capture warp. You basically up throw Cappy in a precise position there to be able to let it close to one of the bullet bills. Kaos is going to be able to get that dram strat there. Basically shakes to home back into this bullet bill, saving all of this detouring. Very nicely done.
Yeah, the alternative to missing this, of course, is having to climb up the slow way, take a little bit of a walk of shame. But yeah, this late crate route that we're talking about, essentially the bullet bills here are flying past this crate. It does contain a moon, but it is a little bit too slow for the any % route. So these guys are going to skip it today, but there is a way to make it much faster, but does require a little bit of manipulation with a cycle later, and we can kind of talk about that as we get closer to it. But for right now, Chaospringle approaching this first Sphinx clip and getting it on the first try.
Dude, Kaos is really feeling it. He's in the zone right now. I mean, look at him. He's really focused about this one, getting Sphinx the first try. He's building his lead. Didn't get too many coins on this one. You got to keep in mind that we need 200 coins throughout this run because we are going to be buying 2 shop moons. But Kaos getting both Sphinx clips first try. Very nicely done. At the same time, Curbs also getting his first clip immediately.
Getting it on the first try. Chaospringle getting the second one on the first try. And on his way through the stage. Now, when you come out of this Sphinx room is when what we call the bird cycle begins. So every time that you enter a loading zone from somewhere else in the Sand Kingdom, you're going to be initiating a bird flying over the top of the kingdom, but we have to do this part particularly fast in order to meet the bird when it is most optimal. So all of this stuff that Kaos is doing, he needs to do at an optimal level in order to meet the bird at exactly the right time.
For sure. Now, Curbs was struggling a little bit on that second part of the clip, and this second part of the clip is what really matters, because as soon as you leave the Sphinx loading zone, that bird cycle will have started. So Curbs might actually encounter the bird a little bit in a weird position. As long as he's able to adjust to that, that'll be fine. What really matters is that you actually be able to catch the bird. Kaos hasn't really made any mistakes so far in this run, which is actually quite awesome to see. He got like the fast action guide skip, he got the dram strat, really nice cascade opening. He's kind of flying through the game right now.
And you can kind of tell by how far away this bird is as you approach the Oasis, that bird in Argentina right now. So Kaos able to get the bird at a very optimal position here. Going to be grabbing that moon right away. LilKirbs, like you said, took a couple extra tries on the Sphinx clip earlier, so you might see that bird approaching just from a little bit of a closer angle, but shouldn't cause him any difficulties.
Oh, Kaos almost getting the one spin from us, but we see Curbs' bird actually more like in West Virginia as it passed him right there. And he's going to actually have to move across that little frozen lake to be able to get the bird right there. He's obviously going to lose him a little bit more time. Gets the moon right now, and it's going to be approaching nodes as well. But Kaos already finishing the kingdom. Very nice sand. It's very nice early game overall from Kaos here, who seems to be adjusting pretty well to this live setting.
Yep, the consistency really just shining through for Kaos. You know, I kind of expected this from him. Like, he plays like a machine. It is absolutely insane to watch him be able to continue this pace and continue these runs and be able to get so close to his summer best. He has one of the best averages in the game. And yeah, definitely showing that here with a 10:07 exit time for Sand Kingdom.
Yeah, that's respectable to say the least, as Curbs is globing in here right now. But if you guys haven't seen the speed game at all, the next 2 kingdoms, and especially, I guess, the Wooded Kingdom, which is going to be coming up after Lake Kingdom right here, it's known to really kind of mix up some runs. Wooded Kingdom has one of the most technical parts and more, I guess, glitchy parts of the run.
Certainly, yes.
So you cannot really make any big mistakes, and if you do, you lose a lot of time. So it's not like Kaos is guaranteed his first win right here. Keep in mind that the amount he's winning by will affect his point total, but he's coming up to Lake Kingdom right now, which this kingdom used to be a pretty chill kingdom throughout our history of running this game, but nowadays we added a very, very precise trick called Lake Clip, found by a very big glitch hunter, Minyash. You're actually going to be grabbing this moon right here. And the corner that Kaos is going to be coming up to right here actually has some weird collision detection. He's going to be able to clip Cappy through on his first attempt. Is going to be actually clipping for the first try. Let's see if he can get that wall jump out of bounds. Is going to be able to do so, gets the checkpoint, and that's a successful LilKirb first try. Good job by Kaos.
Yep, setting it up immediately there. That is exactly what you like to see. You know, it is a lot harder than it looks. Absolutely, these guys are playing it at the top level here. You're going to see LilKirbs to try and attempt it himself, but this particular change to the kingdom actually cuts out one of the boss fights, which makes this kingdom incredibly slow to do, mainly because of the cutscenes. A lot of the optimizing at this level of the game has a lot to do with trying to get rid of the things that we can't control, the things that have kind of a fixed time.
Kaos switching to Joy-Cons right there. You could actually see that on the camera. Kirbs also getting leg clip, but these runners are switching to the Joy-Con controller. Pretty much Kirbs is going to probably do it right now. We do this because you are able to do a down throw, cap throw, only with Joy-Cons exclusively, and that actually saves a good amount of time capturing that cheap after that clip.
That's right. No problem for Joy-Con runners. Anybody who does run this game on Joy-Cons, props to you, first of all, because it is very difficult to use the Joy-Con controllers, in my opinion. But yes, for this particular portion, we do utilize a mechanic that is essentially barred off from Pro-Cons, but Pro controllers just happen to be the most preferred as they are more comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kaos with a pretty solid leg overall. This guy's early game has been astonishing. He seems to be kind of in the zone. He doesn't really get affected by the crowd at all, it seems like. Unplugging the Joy-Cons right there for the rumored time save that happens when you don't have any attached Joy-Cons. But is going to be able to get a 13 flat leg right here. That's deserves some respect in my opinion.
Certainly.
Let's see if Kirbs is also going to be able to get a nice movement here into this last secret room to talk to the NPC who's just deciding to gift you a free moon.
Just for finding her.
Yep.
You know, she just needed a friend in her little cubby hole there. But yeah, Kaos running away with the early game here, but that does not really say a whole lot for the entire portion of the game. There are a lot of tricks that these guys are going to be going for that will significantly lose them time if they do manage to mess them up. And Wooded Kingdom is no exception to that.
This is probably the hugest kingdom. I mean, actually, in our playoff series, for these guys to actually get here, Lost has been kind of crystallizing as the super scary kingdom. Like, runners have been losing leads and even games. They're all around the place. But let's see, Wooded obviously a pretty big one. Looks like Kaos is leading by around 30 seconds here heading into this, but these 30 seconds can be pretty much gone immediately if you were to lose time on this specific nut clip.
That is right. That is the kind of definitive trick that was found sometime around June or July of last year, which essentially kind of reroutes this Wooded Kingdom entirely. Does cause for some kind of risky movement hanging up above what we call the deep woods in this game. If you're unfamiliar with the deep woods, it is kind of a hidden area within this kingdom. Hopping into the deep woods, of course, results in you losing a ton of time. You're not allowed to warp out of the deep woods, so you have to find a way to get out. So these runners not going to want to be doing that here.
Yeah, Kirbs not happy about missing that strategy there to break the rock. And we are actually going to be seeing a little bit of a route divergence here as far as I know, a little bit of a route difference. Kirbs himself doesn't really like to go for the route that Kaos is currently doing. This is what we like to call the tree route. He's going to be picking up this moon on that tree instead of a story moon later that the piranha plant is spawning in. That piranha moon is very free to get fast, but on the technical level it is faster to get this tree moon because you can get some serious speed from that upload. But let's see if Kaos was able to get the second moon clip, and looks like he will clip through the wall. This out of bounds movement is pretty tricky though, but Kaos has been playing very well. Let's see if he's going to be able to go through the section.
Absolutely phenomenal grab on that moon rock there, and he's out of the out of bounds section. But his job is not over yet. This ramp tends to give you a little bit of trouble. You have to kind of time your jumps in a certain way. But he's
barely
just
making it
going
over
to clear the wall.
Good stuff by him. This would have been a very costly bump, but at the same time, looks like Kirbs got his nut clip, is going to be able to get out of bounds again. Maybe he has a little bit of a smoother ramp section.
And also important to note that, yes, it does look like Kirbs made up quite a significant amount of time, but he is going to be skipping a moon and opting for one later. So the gap is still pretty much the same, unless Kaos makes some sort of dramatic error here. But flying through this red maze. Now the movement, honestly, Wooded Kingdom, when I get to Wooded Kingdom, I frantically freak out the entire way through. It is mega focus time for things like this. You know, as a casual player, you're probably thinking, what the heck did he even just do? But doing a roll cancel out of that maze to optimally leave it and come around the corner, getting Cappy back optimally through a motion control. And you can see LilKirbs actually just missing that opportunity there, but saving himself just in time.
Okay, so keep in mind, Kaos is not going to have to pick up this Piranha story mode. He's going to make his way over this gap here, jumping off that fence to do what we like to call the flower road skip. Is going to be able to get that just fine. Another triple jump to go over to this next nut to get another very quick moon. And then he's going to be off to the wooded tower.
Yeah, meanwhile, Kirbs does still have to pick up this story moon. Did kill the Piranha Plant optimally there, using what we call the poison hacks to kind of avoid taking damage with a buffer jump. But he is going to be grabbing the story moon and waiting for this very long cutscene to play. So Chaospringle going to be extending his lead as a result there.
Let's see, Kurt is going to be having to go for another version of the flower road skip. Goes for a spin pound roll cancel, which sounds incredibly technical. But what he's essentially doing is he's going for this very fast version of a ground pound that he gets off of a spin jump. We use that all over the place. You actually spin your control stick twice, jump, and then go for the ground pound to allow that. And then once you are in the rolling state, you can actually do another pretty precise version of inputs. You go for like X, Y, A kind of to cancel that roll to be able to obtain all of that speed in normal Mario's position.
And I don't think any of these kind of mechanics that we use as speedrunners were intended by the game, but it just so happens that, you know, they really do make the game quite fast. So instead of ground pounding, which does require a little bit of an animation to flip Mario around, we do a lot of these spin pounds to kind of negate that.
And that makes that game feel very smooth because turning, especially once you lose your speed, is pretty easy. You can basically obtain super quick speed right from one spin pound. At the same time, we actually didn't get to talk about this. Kirbs just took this massive fall, and if he wasn't meshing his controller very heavily, he would have actually gotten stun locked right there. But he's able to avoid that, now moving across to the nut around the corner. At the same time, Kaos is getting a flawless flooding pipeway, which is the name of this sub-room. This is a cycle-based sub-room, but he nails that one.
Yeah, and the thing I like particularly about this sub-area is that it's all about the cycle, and everybody has their own kind of flavor to it, you know? You'll see every runner do it just a little bit differently depending on what they're comfortable with, and like, as long as you make the cycles and as long as you're beating the fuzzies, of course, it's optimal, so you can see a bunch of different ways of going about this. You can see LilKirbs taking a bit of like a slow single jump here, and using the back wall to wall jump up there instead of the front wall, which Kaos did.
So 1822 fade out for Kaos here on Wooded Kingdom. We kind of like to look at these fade outs because that's where speedrunners would usually split on their timer. And that's where we kind of look at Wooded Kingdom to compare these guys. Looks like Kirbs might have actually made up a little bit of time here in Wooded. Obviously, Kaos had a little bit of a sloppy ramp section. But we will be able to see that exact lead kind of unfolding right here. As Kaos is going into Cloud Kingdom, which will be the first time we'll meet Bowser. And looks like he's heading there with around a 30-second lead still.
And, you know, these boss fights in themselves are relatively straightforward. There's not a whole lot to them. But that being said, this is probably a little bit different than the way you would see this fight being done casually. Obviously, Bowser throwing his hat towards you, and the mechanic of the fight is to take the hat and use it against him. We're going to be right up in Bowser's face this entire time, trying to manipulate the hats in a way that we can just immediately start punching Bowser as soon as the hat is available.
Kaos is going to be able to get that first fast head grab. I guess the second one, but this is the one where you actually go for the backflip timing. Kirbs actually with a pretty fancy strat there, jumping across to the Bowser arena, going for this little spin throw. Very fancy.
And gets the third phase just fine. So it's going to be up to LilKirbs to make sure that he manages to grab the hats as optimally as possible within these phases to keep the pace. And it does look a little bit harder than it looks. This second phase especially can sometimes trip you up because the third phase you get a little bit of a damage boost to kind of help your timing a little bit. That second phase you don't have that luxury, so LilKirbs getting it just fine and going to be keeping pace with Kaos through Lost Kingdom.
And this is where I'm going to be starting to sweat a little bit. I've been mentioning earlier that this is the kingdom where people have been losing probably the most amount of time in our playoff series, and Kaos is going to be starting this one right off. So the way we approach this kingdom is usually the story event of this kingdom is kind of supposed to be Klepto, a bird that many of these SM64 viewers might know. He's out there to steal your cap, and Mario's movement in this game without Cappy is extremely limited. But Klepto actually has a trigger kind of around him, and by going the routes that Kaos is currently going through, we're actually able to avoid that cutscene trigger entirely. You'll see Klepto in the distance right there. He's just going to run up to him, completely skipping that event and just grabbing these extremely quick moons. This kingdom is probably lasting just a little bit more than 2 minutes. It's really quick.
LilKirbs having a little bit of difficulty with his meme tree setup, as we call it. Oh my goodness. managing to get the cap bounce to save himself here, but he's going to have to reset up for this trick.
I'm not sure if that's enough. Oh, it is.
Oh, taking the
bonk right there, very unfortunate. He was going for a pretty fancy backup for like a cap return jump off of that tree jump, but he is going to be taking a death right there, which is not only going to affect his coin count, but obviously also his overall time.
That is correct. The very punishing thing about Lost Kingdom is this purple poison hanging around the entire kingdom. We don't collect any checkpoints along the way in this kingdom, so any mistake that you make, if you fall in this stuff, if you take a death, you go back to the Odyssey. So the further you get into this kingdom, the more costly that mistake just so happens to be. Luckily, LilKirbs taking it at the beginning, but still a pretty hefty time chunk lost there.
And Kaos is going to be able to clutch out Lost here pretty solidly. This guy is on a pretty good run right now. He's not going to be able to quite get a time less than 22 minutes leaving this kingdom, but he's still what we like to call on 1:00 pace, being able to technically get a time of just an hour flat and then a couple seconds. So he's doing really well.
Within a minute of an hour, yeah, and that in itself is incredibly impressive stuff. And, you know, LilKirbs does take it a little bit hard at the beginning of this run, but we are still within the first 20 minutes or so, so there is plenty of time to catch up.
Yeah. Let's look at Kirbs right here as he's approaching the cage triple jump, something that we just didn't really get to mention as Kaos was doing this. You basically intentionally lose control over Cappy here to go for this very tight triple jump. Oh my god, dude, Kirbs almost sliding down. He seems very relieved right there on the camera as he's still able to get that moon, gets the moon below the bridge. And even if he was to die right now, that wouldn't be the biggest deal. He's going to be happy to finish up Lost and also going to be making his way over to Night Metro, which is where Kaos is currently in.
Yep, and Metro Kingdom, the next kingdom, this is kind of the kingdom that the game really kind of hyped up for us. There's a lot of very flashy visual stuff going on here, and the kind of precursor to this kingdom is that it is under attack by this giant robotic wiggler. Unfortunately, there are not enough moons. We're kind of talking about how you need to collect a certain amount of moons before you're allowed to leave. 20 in Metro Kingdom is a lot. Unfortunately, we can't collect those until we have taken care of this pest problem at the top of City Hall. So that is our first objective, and you're going to see Kaos climbing City Hall, the first to kind of approach this boss here. Now, it'll be interesting to see. There are a couple of ways of making your way up this City Hall. Looks like Kaos is going for the more safer, the more kind of consistent way of doing that. We might see LilKirbs take the more dangerous approach to this. We'll see.
Yeah, losing a little bit of his speed there, trying to go across those kind of girders to be able to get a triple jump off. But at the same time, still getting there, getting the capture. We actually used to do this very unnecessary hard jump, kind of a triple jump across this gap. People like to call it the impossible jump. Didn't actually turn out to be that impossible, but it was a pretty unnecessary risk and it's actually slower. So runners not actually doing that anymore.
Yep.
Now making their way to that tank, Kaos that is, to actually start fighting this Mecha Wiggler boss. And as you mentioned, this guy actually has a little bit of RNG.
Just a little bit, yes. Probably the one element of RNG that does exist in this game that can really trip you up. There are a handful of different patterns that you'll see this Wiggler do on this second phase. Obviously, this is all predictable. We know exactly where we need to place our tank, but as soon as he pops out of the wall to initiate that second shooting phase, we can see a bunch of different things happen. And, you know, as a very familiar runner of this game, we've probably seen every single one of them, but that doesn't mean that any one is any better or worse. There are a couple of really good patterns. We'll just have to see what Kaos gets here.
Yeah, and this is the one that specifically matters because you want to shoot this Wiggler before he goes back into the wall. Looks like he's ready for this pattern. Moves in closely, gets all of these shots in time. Is just going to miss one of them at the very end of the tail, but he can still be happy about this one as he is able to get the 2-cycle right here, defeats Wiggler, and Kaos is on a pretty solid run right now.
He is. He actually kind of looks a little bit frustrated by perhaps taking damage in that fight. It can be done damageless, but again, some patterns are a little bit easier than others in that particular situation. So we're going to see what LilKirbs gets here. Essentially, any of the patterns where the Wiggler crosses across the bottom initially is one of the best patterns to get. You can kind of move in on the Wiggler, you can avoid the shots, and you can get the fight over with very quickly here, so we'll see.
Yeah, also quite interesting to see how these runners kind of like to dodge Mecha Wiggler. It almost looks like they have to be taking damage, but yeah, this guy's hitbox is pretty useless. There's a bunch of enemies that have like completely useless attacks, even Bowser at the very end. We'll get into that as we get there. But let's see Kirbs' Mecha Wiggler pattern as it gets revealed right here on the wall. The Wiggler is kind of wiggling around right now. Not the hugest fan of this one. Is going to be missing one shot onto the Wiggler's head. But as long as he's able to snipe this one. Oh, that was actually a pretty clean snipe as he gets Wiggler pretty nicely. Gets a good 2-cycle. and is going to be off today, Metro. Now, at the same time, Kaos is approaching Scooter Clip. Dangerous, talk to me about Scooter Clip.
So Scooter Clip here.
He's driving.
This Moon, and just like that, his nose is just big enough to kind of scoot right up into that cage and grab that Moon. Of course, the intended way is to use that little RC car that's driving around in there, but, you know, we're speedrunners. We don't do that. We're not about that life.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting to see how people actually look when they do
That's right,
because
yes.
you have to turn around your controller to actually get the amount of steering possible to clip into this cage. So you see these guys literally turn their entire bodies kind of to be able to actually clip into the cage. We can also take a look how LilKirbs is going to do that. But
that's right. And it's another one of those things where everybody has their own way of doing it. If you've ever watched anybody with a Joy-Con do it, sometimes they have some very creative ways. For example, Fur Underscore is a very popular runner of this game, and he kind of takes this air guitar pose every time he does the scoot clip, and it's very fascinating to watch. But LilKirbs is going to be approaching this right away, so we'll see just how he looks as he's doing this scoot clip.
He's already smiling. He's preparing for his driving section. As he hops onto the scooter, he's not going to be turning his arms to actually in a position to clip right here. He's going to be missing it here, a little bit disappointed, but you can back this up, and he actually gets the quickest backup possible. You can basically clip on every side of the cage. It's going to be able to stay onto the scooter, driving across to the awning, and it's going to be just fine.
Yeah, luckily that Moon is kind of dead center inside of that cage, so you can use any side that you need to in order to grab the Moon. Not all of the glitches are quite that forgiving, I guess you could say. We're going to approach a particular clip later on in the game that is much more particular than that.
Now, this is actually a good time to check coin counts. We were talking earlier about how coins actually matter a little bit in this run, and we'll explain why. But if I remember correctly, Kaos was at 70 coins at the end of Lost, and that might actually signal us that he will go to Seaside first. We'll explain that once we are sure if he will, but I think he's only at 80 right now, meaning that these guys will probably split up after this kingdom. Why is that, Dangerous?
It just so happens that some of the fastest Moons that you can grab while you're doing this any % route just so happen to be shop Moons. Every kingdom has a Moon inside of it that you can buy for 100 coins, and in 2 of the kingdoms, it just so happens that those shop Moons are the fastest ones. So we are going to be looking to gather at least 200 coins through the entirety of this run. We've already bought one, and that was in the Wooded Kingdom, but the second one appears within the Snow Kingdom, which just so happens to be one of the choices in this proverbial fork in the road coming up after Metro Kingdom. So if we don't have enough coins by then, it's usually smarter to go to Seaside first in order to gather some coins there before returning to Snow.
Now, Kaos is actually at this very interesting spot. He's at 88 coins, and there is a bunch of coins scattered around Snow Kingdom that you can obtain for free.
That's right.
But being in this specific spot where it's 12 coins, which is quite a big amount to get throughout Snow, there is, once again, there is a few coins. I think you would be fine getting 12 along the way, but you might need to do like an extra cap throw, so I would be a fan if he decided to go to Seaside first, just to not lose time at all.
That's right.
It is kind of awkward to mesh through the text there and then still select Seaside, so we'll see what he decides to do.
That is true, and of course, if there are any deaths in Snow Kingdom, for example, it is very possible that you could lose 10 coins as a result of a death. So it might just be the safer option to go to Seaside anyways.
For sure. Well, we'll see. He's about to leave Metro, and he is actually going to be getting a sub-30 fade-out here.
Absolutely
which is,
nuts.
Yeah, this used to be like this crazy time. I remember the first time we actually looked at the possibilities in this game, people considered sub-31 minutes to be amazing.
Yes. And now here we are with the level of optimization and the tricks that we found. And, you know, on excellent pace, some of these runners are getting even 29 2Xs leaving this Metro Kingdom. But, you know, a 29 4X, especially in a setting like this, is absolutely phenomenal stuff from Kaos. He is not showing any signs of slowing down at all.
And let's see what he decides to do here, because we might break up a little bit, and it looks like we will. Kaos actually, in my opinion, making the smart choice there, and he is going to be going to Seaside first. Now, this will not matter. The only time that he's technically losing to this is this one input that he just did to select Seaside. Other than that, there will be no differences, because both of them are going to have to go through Seaside and through Snow. But the next time they will kind of meet is going to be the Luncheon Kingdom after these two.
That's right. So even if you are familiar with these any % runs, maybe you were thinking that Snow Kingdom obviously comes first. So you might say, oh, Kaos is all of a sudden in a remarkable lead. They will kind of diverge and meet up again sometime later. LilKirbs looking just fine on his coin count, so he won't have to worry about that at all. He will be going to Snow first.
And Seaside actually has seen a relatively recent route change. It's probably one of the, other than Sand, one of the most recent route changes we've seen. Circle, who's known to be pretty much the biggest glitch hunter in this game. He's extremely creative, looks at the weirdest parts of this game, has found a way to clip out of bounds with a cheap here. And it actually happens to be this specific canoe where we always thought a route change has to take place. And this clip helped us a lot to actually gain access to a very fast moon this way, which is usually very slow. We're actually able to clip out of bounds to approach these Sphinx loading zone here. Usually these Sphinxes, you have to answer a quiz of them, so you have to get down to the Sphinx, talk to the Sphinx, answer the question, and then the room will slowly open. But this way we can collect one of our previously last moons very quickly and then just approach that loading zone, get that moon, and walk back to the ship.
It is kind of funny that one of the slowest moons that you can obtain casually becomes some of the quickest by breaking the game apart. And we are going to see that on Kaos' screen pretty soon here. He's taking control of a cheap, gathering some very fast moons within this underwater portion, and then he will be executing the glitch. And if you guys are trying this at home, it's actually extremely easy to set up. So he will be approaching it just after a couple of moons here, but there is a bit of an invisible wall going on the outskirts of this kingdom, and if you were to just try and swim against it, you would probably just be met with this invisible wall. But by manipulating the way that these captures work, you can kind of uncapture and then recapture, and the game gets tricked into thinking you're in a different position, and it's going to be able to push Kaos just outside of the barrier. So you're going to see him set it up here.
That's what he's doing right now. He's swimming outside of this invisible force, this invisible boundary, and that actually gets deactivated that way. So he is able to just swim through that to that ground. It's going to actually be shaking here to extend the cheap's hitbox to collect that moon, and that was a very nice out of bounds section approaching the Sphinx. So at the same time, LilKirbs was actually able to do another moon clip there, cutting off a little bit of movement in Snow Kingdom to gain access to the room. So a ton of out of bounds happening at the same time. Both of these guys playing amazing. And yeah, Kaos is going to be done with CSAT here, going to be going into Snow now, which is definitely the longer split, as Curbs took a little bit of an unfortunate bonk there on that wall.
Gonna have to reset up his position and get on top of that archway to gather that moon. Probably not the most fortunate situation. Getting bullied by these spinies on the way by as well. So just a bit of a rough, blowy Joey room, as we call it. These names of these guys are the Typhus, but a little bit of a community name for them.
Uh-oh. Okay, barely maxed that time. I was a little bit scared right there. He entered the Blowy Joy a little bit on the right side, so I was afraid if he actually was able to make that gap count, but he was. And he is done with that first sub-room in Snow. Curbs' coin count is looking extremely healthy. He's going to be able to, as you said earlier, buy that shop moon just fine, even if he was to take an unfortunate death. So that's not going to be an issue for him.
Yep. Snow Kingdom being one of those kingdoms in the route that we kind of just have to suffer through. Of all of the kingdoms in this game, this is probably one of the most closed ones. There's a lot of moons available at your disposal, in this game, but Snow Kingdom is one of the ones that doesn't really open up until you've achieved what we call World Peace. So by skipping out on the World Peace section of this game, which is very slow, we kind of have to go for some very slow moons in these sub-areas that you see LilKirbs going through now. Including these very long story animations. We don't really have a choice, though. It just so happens that these are the fastest ones available to us.
Yeah, Snow kind of feels like an awkward kingdom to speedrun because there's so many of these rooms. I mean, this kingdom only really breaks open as soon as you go through the story portion of the run, and there is actually a out-of-bounds clip to approach that early, but the amount of time that you spend doing this bound ball race is so long that it's not going to be worth it. We are going to have to suffer a little bit with these slower moons. But we found, this was almost like a year ago, but we actually found a way to at least get rid of one of the very slow ones. We used to enter another one of these sub-rooms, but there was always rumored that there was like this one specific moon close to the Odyssey, a treasure chest. We're usually supposed to get that with a painting, a war painting after you beat the game. But Curbs is going to be getting this now with what we like to call Snow Dram, another reference to Runner Dram. This is a setup that Ikitrix and Shaden found, very famous runners of this game early on. And this is a big trick, very tight jump, and Curbs is going to be able to get this, which is fine, as he exhales of excitement. Very nicely done by him. Kaos also did Snow Clip, by the way, very nice.
And getting what we call the Shireen bounce there as well, just a very quick way to return back to the Odyssey, jumping and hitting his cap in a way that he can vector directly to the globe and finish off the kingdom. But LilKirbs is just finishing with Snow Kingdom. He still has all of the Seaside Kingdom to go as well. Meanwhile, Kaos is just approaching the second sub-area of Snow Kingdom. Still looks like he's holding on to a pretty substantial lead here.
Kaos not being happy about this one. He was trying to dive on top of the pipe and then do one of these spin pounds, but actually cuts the animation of the pipe, kind of sucking Mario in. It's not going to be able to cut out this one, but that's just a minor mistake. His run overall is still obviously awesome. And keep in mind that Kirbs now actually has to play through the entirety of C-Set, which Kaos is already done with.
That's right.
Now, it is kind of neat to think about stuff like that. Kirbs is actually the world record holder for C-Set as an individual level, so he has the best C-Set time out of everyone. Let's see if he's going to be able to play up to that level right now. Gets a little bit of a ledge grab right there, but it's just a tiny time loss.
Yeah, very small miss on that one, but not a big deal. He's setting himself up to continue through the kingdom just fine. Kaos still has to be very happy with his pace so far. If there have been any mistakes here, they have been very minimal. He's still flying through the stage.
Yeah, for sure. Gets the pipe suck this time, as he long jumps into it and kind of rolls through that transition. And he's going to be doing Snowdrum right now. If you keep in mind, this was actually his weakest stat on that stat card. I feel like he has been doing very well on that section overall recently. That it was kind of like as the leagues started, he might have been a little bit more inconsistent, but recently has been showing his consistency that we know him for in these races as well, and even on this live stage.
Yeah, watching these guys do their thing on their own channels and like during their PB practices, it is amazing to see just how consistent they're able to get some of these crazy things going. A little bit of an extra setup on the Snowdram here, though.
Is going to be getting it, though, very nicely done. Not opening the chest immediately, but that won't almost matter. He went for like a crazy fast setup right there, and maybe he was like, I'm not trusting that. He redid his setup, and he's going to be fine getting that moon. Looking relieved as he moves over to Luncheon actually now.
That's right. So LilKirbs still has a little bit of work to do in Seaside here. Kaos is going to be on his way to the next kingdom, which is Luncheon. And if Wooded Kingdom is kind of the runner's bane of the early game, I would say that Luncheon is probably the runner's bane of the end game.
Yeah.
Lots of opportunities here to lose little bits of time literally everywhere, and playing at an optimal level, of course, is very tricky to do.
For sure. Now, Kirbs is coming up at that boundary manipulation, kind of what we like to call it, clip here at the end of Seaside. Let's see if he's also going to be able to do, because there's actually a little scary time loss here that you can get if you clip back in bounds on this specific moon. If you're too close to this, you can actually end up back inside of the boundaries, and then you won't have access to that swings moon. You actually have to talk to the swings, which is obviously pretty slow.
And it kind of defeats the purpose of what makes the clip work well anyways. So luckily, LilKirbs not going to be suffering from that this time.
At the same time, Kaos is now starting off on Luncheon Kingdom. Now, Luncheon Kingdom is another one of these big open kingdoms, kind of like wooded and sand. One of these huge ones with a ton of story events. We actually only approach those... Actually, we do approach 5 story moons, meaning the first one here at Speward, another one from that cheese section later, and then 3 from the meat that we will be capturing. And this one specifically is very fast. Speward is very slow, but at this point we have not really found a route that is able to efficiently skip this one. Kaos also showing a little bit of respect here to Kirbs, who is known to invent this very useful strategy of going into first person in Speward, which doesn't do anything. It's kind of like... Runners like to do it.
Just like to show off the flashiness a little bit, you know? Really give us the scenic view of the boss fight.
But yeah, extremely open kingdom, and we do a ton of technical stuff in there. Some of the stuff is actually underrated, such as that first jump here. This salt triple jump is actually pretty tight. You can barely make it up there if you space your cap dives and jumps accordingly, and Kirbs is going to be able to do so.
Nailing on the first try, but not able to get those optimal rolls, but does get a very flashy roll across the grates there, showing off the prowess of his timing there. Almost identical moonsync there. That was actually quite nice.
Is also going to be able to get that roll cancel across that grab and just gap, and then just ledge grabs to activate the boss fight. Very nicely done. Is now going to be fighting in Speedrun, probably also throwing on some first-person cams for the good old times.
And now, honestly, in my opinion, this first part of Luncheon that LilKirbs is going through and Kaos is just essentially leaving is probably the easier part of the kingdom, in my opinion. We are approaching quite a bit more technical stuff here. So, Kaos grabbing this moon here, throwing a turnip into the soup pot, maybe seeing a little bit of an optimal bonk here. Yup. There it is.
That is the optimal bonk, but I mean, there's technically a better strategy for this one, but this bonk happens to be so satisfying because usually you hate bonks. This time you can actually do it on purpose, which allows you to grab the moon quite low, making you able to get a lower position to be going for the backflip afterwards. Now this part is actually really interesting. Kaos doesn't get the quite optimal angle. Sometimes you are able to actually walk across that island super quickly because you want to catch that potable cycle. Kaos with the... as he gets the potable right there. Very nicely done.
Yep, the perfect capture warp there. That Podoboo wearing Mario's hat at just the right time. You can see that nod of satisfaction from Kaos as he pulls off what we call the camera manipulation-less version of that trick.
Now this is the fork subroom, such an intense subroom, very, very cool movement. These runners actually go for these motion control cap throws to be, especially up throws, to capture those forks a little bit more optimally. 2 moons here that are very quick. You'll find these moons in pretty much any category, and Kaos gets them optimally.
And just like that, leaving the room. And setting up for what is another one of these kind of optimal tricks in this kingdom. So we were talking a little bit about how that scoop clip is kind of lenient and you can get it from any angle, but we're going to be approaching a clip here that is a little bit more specific and a little bit weird, but something that is only available in 1.0 version of this game, which is what all of these runners are playing on. Essentially, we're going to use this turnip. That looks like a very good throw, and position it in a way that we can clip this hammer brother into the cage first try.
The turnip kind of pushed him into the moon. That looked really sick.
Yep.
Kaos with an... Oh, he's happy about this one. He got a really good throw. Usually you see runners kind of readjust that turnip if it's not in the optimal spot, but he doesn't have to deal with this. Kerbs had a little bit of issues actually getting the Podoboo cycle. But, I mean, Kaos' run is just phenomenal at this point.
Yeah, it's really hard to compete with somebody who's playing at their kind of consistent level here. But Kerbs is making do, and he'll be the next to approach this turnip clip coming up. And we'll see how that goes for him.
And as Kerbs is jumping there with the Podoboo, which actually requires you to do some pretty finicky jumps with the Podoboo to even gain access to this higher section. This is something that's almost underrated. It looks so natural, but that's actually not like really intended. Kaos is doing this last pretty intense movement towards that meat capture. Gets that very nicely, spin pound into a spin throw. Captures the meat, and he's going to be able to pick up these very, very free triple moons here.
Just hanging in the air here. Now, of course, with this game, if you played it as a casual, you probably tried your best to accomplish the game's story objectives and like really follow along with what was going on. LilKirbs there with a very, very solid turnip clip.
Good stuff. Also getting like a very, very good throw on his first attempt.
But it just so happens that with any percent, you don't actually need to do any of these story objectives for the most part in order to complete the game. So even though this volcano is raging and this bird is getting very angry at us,
just getting out of there.
We're just going to leave. We're just going to get out.
There is no more time to be wasted. We are free to leave, and we are going to be off to Ruined Kingdom on Kaos' screen right here. But let's watch as Kaos is traveling there, how Kerbs is going to be able to approach that last movement of the kingdom. I mentioned how this can be scary, especially these structures here in Lunch Kingdom, these kind of candy rocks is I think what the game is intending them to be. Have some very weird collisions, so sometimes it looks like you'd be jumping on them, but you're actually sliding down. Gets a nice angle on these ones. Cap dives over. And is going to be able to capture that fork as well. Good stuff by Kerbs.
And on his way to the free multi-moon up there, no issues, and on his way to Ruined Kingdom. And now, for anybody watching at home, this was probably a very fantastic spectacle of this game. If you played it the first time, you get here, you're very scared, Bowser shot you out of the air, you're wondering what's going to happen, and you approach this giant arena to be met with the Lord of Lightning himself. But as speedrunners, you know, this tends to be kind of the portion of the game where we kind of just get to take a breather. We get to relax a little bit. So while this boss fight does look very scary, the mechanics of it are very, very consistent and very much the same every single time.
Yeah, and usually Dangers and I specifically, we like to call this section. We usually do the Ruined Trash Talk segment.
The Ruined Trash Talk section.
This is the Ruined Trash Talk segment brought to you by PACE. I mean, it's actually kind of awkward to fill this one because now we are at PACE. You know, back in the day, we would actually shout out PACE on the event that is going to be happening right now.
That's right. So shout outs to this live event happening right now at this very moment.
For sure. I do have another interesting topic to talk about though, guys. I'm not sure if you actually saw that, but during our intermission cutscene, we're kind of tracking donations. You guys are free to donate money to this event to kind of contribute to the prize pool. You can even cheer bits, and if you reach a specific amount of bits, we as GSA will be contributing some extra money to that prize pool ourselves. And you can also directly donate to contribute to the event's costs and the prize pool for these runners. So these guys obviously traveling here from all across the globe to be able to compete, and that would obviously be awesome if you were able to help us out. But let's look actually into Rune for a little bit. This is the first time we are explaining what these guys are doing. So what are they actually doing then just to speed up this fight?
So essentially, there's not a whole lot that you can do to kind of manipulate this boss in any way. He's going to be going through his phases unadulterated, you could say, but every time that he slams his head down on the ground, he's going to have these pegs to pull out to initiate the second phase. So what we do to just speed it up just a tiny bit is we're going to be taking a little bit of a damage boost and getting on the head as early as we possibly can so that we're nice and close and are able to pull the pegs out as fast as we possibly can. But aside from that, that's just about it. That's the fastest way to get this boss over and done with.
That is about all we can do. Now, it is interesting to say that even though, as you said, we like to take a little bit of a breather here, these electrical hoops and the dragon itself still do damage to you, so you can technically die there. And if you die anywhere, this would be one of the most costly deaths in the game.
Absolutely, yes.
Because you would be starting at the start of the game, like at the Odyssey. You would need to travel all the way back to the dragon, restart the fight from the beginning.
It's very common for boss fights to have that kind of mechanic where if you die somewhere, you have to do the entire thing over. We get to avoid a lot of bosses in this game, but this just so happens to be one that you cannot miss. And so, you have to be extra careful to not die, of course. Otherwise, you're looking at probably about 3 minutes if you die at the end. So, as easy as it is, there's always that in the back of your mind. And it is not unheard of to die in this boss fight. We have seen it, in fact, in this league before.
So Kaos just got a fade out here of 47 minutes and 20 seconds. Now, an optimal time for these last two kingdoms would be around 13 minutes, even less sometimes if you go really hard. So he's actually on relatively low 1 hour flat pace. That's absolutely crazy for his first run in front of a live audience here at PACE.
Yeah, just absolutely phenomenally consistent from Chaospringle and showing no signs of weakness in a setting where, all eyes are really on him. So really good stuff from Kaos so far. That being said, we still do have about 13, 15 minutes left, so anything can still happen in these last couple of kingdoms.
Yeah, let's keep in mind that Kirbs is also going to be able to maybe be around 90 seconds. And it's also worth to say that these guys will be getting points according to how they actually ended up finishing this one. That's right. So Kirbs wants to play as well as possible here to get his maximum amount of points in. And let's see if he's going to be able to do this. These last two kingdoms, as you said, can lose you big time, especially in the Mecha Brutal fight, which is the last fight of this kingdom.
For a couple of different reasons, this Bowser's... I think that all of your platforming skill and expertise really do come to a head in this Bowser's Kingdom. There's a couple... It's kind of broken up into sections, and each section has its own kind of platforming challenges. So the first one being just very tight, precise jumps to get up as high as you possibly can and continue along the stage. The second stage that you're going to see Kaos do here requires you to collect 5 moon shards. And before you're able to progress through the stage, you need to collect all 5 of them. And he's going to be doing some very technically precise stuff. Very, very solid catch by Kaos to continue to stay on the stage.
Oh, I don't like his position right here. He's actually going to be missing Klepto. The Klepto, you see, Kaos is not excited about this one. He's going to have to go for a interesting backup right here, hopefully making it up that he doesn't seem too excited about this one. It's really interesting to see these guys react, because earlier Kaos was already seeming like disappointed by missing a cap throw towards a capture, like an electrical wire, but this is obviously a pretty big mistake, but looks like he's at least recovering decently fine from it.
Yeah, and really important to know just how consistent this guy is. And so any of these kinds of mistakes in his PB attempts would obviously result in something like the end and probably a send back to the beginning. Almost perfect sync on the story moon grabs there. But he still has a pretty sizable lead, still one chunk of the Bowser's Kingdom ahead here. And we're going to see him go for this kind of Bowser Dram strategy, as we call it. You're hearing the word Dram being thrown around a lot, but essentially that usually pertains to some sort of capture warp.
It's going to play out right here. Chaos throwing Cappy back to let it hover close to that electrical wire. Is going to be able to basically cut out that detouring from that Moon. Makes that Moon incredibly fast. Is going to be able to go over to these boss fights. And now, Dangerous, we haven't even thought about this. This is actually going to be quite interesting to see. Chaos, I can't believe it, actually going to be going to top her first. What a madman. Curbs taking a pretty big mistake here on charts as well. Is going to be able... Is he going for the triple jump back up? Almost gets that. Is going to be getting bombed right here. Hopefully only at 1 HP right now. He can't get bombed again. So many things happening at the same time. He's actually going to get bombed right there. And he can't believe it himself. Super unfortunate stuff. The Chaos is laughing. What the hell?
Takes the hit on that final. At least he grabbed the checkpoint. Doesn't have to grab any of these moon shards again, but he is going to have to grab the ones that he hasn't got yet. But Kaos probably very happy about that particular result from LilKirbs here. And he's going to be fighting Harriet second now.
And actually, Dangerous, let's keep track of this, because we're actually going to be doing all the commentary for Super Mario Odyssey, and this is the first time we see this boss fight section. It technically doesn't matter if you fight Harriet, which is the boss that Chaos is fighting right now, or Topper, which is what he was fighting previously. It doesn't matter which one of the two you do first, but runners kind of like to switch it up, or I mean, they kind of like to take... kind of sides. Some people like to do Harriet first, some people like to do Topper first, and really keep count on what's more popular during this event. Chat is usually getting pretty angry, depending, like they really are into this one. They want to see their favorite boss being fought first, and so far it's Topper first, 1-0. But I think Curbs might actually immediately tie this one.
I think LilKirbs is probably going to go for that Harriet first strategy. We'll have to see. Depends on how he's feeling as he approaches this, but yeah, chat gets very passionate about who you fight first, you know? It really is, I think it's like a horoscope, you know? It really does judge who you are as a person, depending on who you pick. So, you know, keep that in mind, chat.
And there we go, Curbs fighting Harriet first, so we are 1-1 right now. Let's see what this is going to be like at the end of the event. Is not going to be able to actually knock that bomb back onto Harriet. He was super confident that he got it, so he was diving across, but took damage on Harriet's head. Is going to be able to back this up as Chaos just got his last moon other than the boss fight, and is going to be climbing on top of the kingdom to challenge Mecha Brutal.
Taking a very risky jump there across the gap. You do have to really time and pace your jumps and your cap throws in order to make it across that gap, and the camera fights you the entire way, but Chaos showing no signs of slowing down here. And really, come to think of it, there were a couple minor mistakes throughout the run, but essentially the only one that really cost him a huge amount of time is probably just collecting the shards along Bowser's Kingdom. Otherwise, he's been pulling a very solid pace, probably on like a 1 hour and 20-second-ish pace up until that shards. So still probably going to be able to come in underneath 1 hour and 1 minute, which is absolutely phenomenal stuff, especially for this very first showing at pace. But of course, we are within the Robo-Brutal fight that you were talking about earlier. Anything can happen here.
This one is very, very different from what you do casually. We actually climbed this Mecha Brutal without using those intended Pokeos or birds at all. Chaos getting a very nice climb, but is going to be able to hit those 2 bubbles immediately, but those second 2 bubbles are actually where it gets really tricky. Earlier in the run, on the live cycle of this run, we used to ground pound Harriet last and Spewart third, but now we actually do Harriet third, which is a bubble on top, and then we go for a very precise dive strategy, which we like to call target acquire, to actually hit Spewart at the very end. Let's see if Chaos is going to be able to do this, gets knocked back, and gets a very quick spin pound, target acquired, done with Bowser's.
Just like that. The very tricky part about that, of course, is that if you mess up your dive timing, you will fall off of the Robo-Brutal and have to make your way back up, kind of the intended way with the birds, but Chaos showing no signs of slowing down here and on his way to the final kingdom of the game. Now, if you were playing as a casual, you might have actually noticed that there were no kind of bubbles to fill in as far as the moon count goes in the top left corner. You can see with LilKirbs there, actually. But we have been kind of going out of our way to collect some moons anyways, and the reason for that is once you finish the Bowser's Kingdom, the game kind of debates you into thinking that this is the last place that we go. But when you beat the Robo-Brutal, Bowser flies away, and you need to collect a couple more moons. So we're just going to go ahead and take care of that on our way in order to make it faster.
Since we already know it's going to be 8 moons that we are required to collect here to actually leave the kingdom. And that's actually something that I haven't thought about in a long time. Usually this is supposed to be Bowser's castle, right? This is supposed to be where it's going down. But nah, Bowser's actually leaving to Moon, which is actually the last kingdom of the run.
That is
and
right.
Chaos is going to be making his way over there immediately.
And this being the actual penultimate kingdom in the run, where everything kind of comes to a head and we face Bowser for the last time.
at the same time. Let's look at Kirbs' macro. He actually very crucial jump from him right there. It's actually going to be, bouncing on top of the bubble there. Is not going to be able to make that in time. As long as he gets this snipe right here, he should be fine. He should be able to get back up on top, and then it kind of like resets to the old version of fighting the mech.
Trying to go for what we call topper acquired, which is another very quick spin pound directly on the bubble rather than kind of lining it up from the side, as you saw Kaos do earlier, but did just kind of mess it up a little bit there. But he is staying on top, and that is the crucial time save for this particular trick.
Now let's look if he's going to be able to get that last bubble, if he's going to be able to get the target acquired. Positions on that line, which is actually helping you a lot to get the strategy, gets a very quick dive.
Target acquired.
Defeats mech as well, target acquired, for sure. Now Kaos is moving up towards Moon. This kingdom obviously has this low gravity mechanic, which allows us to abuse those vectors. Vectors is what we like to call the specific position of Mario, where he's kind of angled in a 45-degree angle in the air, giving you a bunch of speed. He was able to use that very nicely there, bridging that gap.
That is right. We used this a couple of times in the run, most notably at the end here, but also at the very beginning with that frog room. You're jumping kind of through the air in a diagonal motion, and it is going to save you quite a bit of time than just trying to go in a straight line. The game's mechanics allow for that. Now, Moon Kingdom in itself is not an incredibly difficult place to be, but it is an incredibly costly place to make mistakes. It's kind of broken up into 3 chunks. The first one being this approach to the cathedral that you're seeing Kaos do here. Especially right here, doing what we call the Moon Cave skip. Now, if you've played this game casually, you know that we probably just avoided a lot of turmoil and trouble in your very first playthrough of this game.
This is huge.
Yeah. Optimally, the Moon Cave probably takes you about 4 minutes to do, but we are just going to jump right past it and avoid it entirely.
And this is kind of meant to be this final challenge before you actually gain access to Bowser. But funnily enough, as you said, this was one of the first big skips found in the game. I mean, it kind of, that swings being in that specific position kind of almost hinted to that being possible. It's also really weird that this bugged wall jump works exactly there. You could almost think like that might have been something that the developers wanted to do to gain access through the kingdom a little bit better when playing. But who knows? We are able to skip the entirety of this cave, thankfully, because without that, a sub 1 hour time would be far out of our reach at this moment.
Certainly.
And obviously, Nitro Reader being the first one who acquired it here, being here. Actually, Kirbs, Kaos, and Nitro all having that sub 1 hour time as their personal best.
4 people have been able to accomplish that goal. The other one being Goryuya, who is far away in Japan, unfortunately, but I'm sure he would love to be here at an event like this sometime in the future.
And let's look at Bowser Fight 2. Actually, there is not too many things that change in this one. Bowser is still allowing you to grab his heads pretty quickly, but he is spewing a little bit of fire. But essentially, all this fire is like a ground scan. So as long as you're in the air as the fire is going towards you, as Kaos is showing off right here, it actually won't hurt you.
Yeah, Kaos essentially on fire at this moment, but not taking any damage as a result of it. So thankfully, it is just a very harmless ground scan. He's going to be finishing up this very final phase of this fight. Basically what is the second kind of area of the Moon Kingdom, and moving on to the final phase, which is the escape sequence.
And this escape sequence is actually quite a huge deal. Now, we have been talking about how Kaos is on a really good run, and he's definitely obviously ahead right now, but there's a multiple chances of losing a bunch of time at this escape section. One being the 2D section relatively early on, the other one being the very last room of the game, being the pillar room.
That's right.
If we look at any percent, which is the main category of this game at this point.
And the 2D section in itself is not very difficult to do, but we are going to be going for a particularly risky strat here. You're going to see Kaos open up the bridge to access this 2D section, and we're going to be using some of the game's kind of more forgiving mechanics and just jumping barely off of a cliff and trying to jump onto a block a little bit faster, saving us only about 2 seconds, but potentially risking it all. So we'll see Kaos go for it here.
Gets the first jump, gets the second, gets the third, very nicely done, gets the skip. And now it's really only some movement and pillar room between him and getting a nice time. But keep in mind, this is a group stage event, and Kaos is going to try to get as many points as possible here. So he wants to get what we like to call the early pillar in this last room to kind of increase his lead even further, potentially. And talk to me about early pillar vendors. What is it about this room that can be quite hard?
So if you're approaching this room for the very first time, your instinct is probably to just go around in a circle and try and bust open these pillars one by one. But as he's approaching these pillars, he's going to be trying to throw some fireballs in this one pillar's direction, trying to get all 5 to land. and he is able to get it. So
Very
without
nice, yeah.
even
Going
approaching...
for the quick two snipes right there, and these actually look really good. He's going to be able to land both of these pillars, both of these fireballs onto the pillar. This is crazy, dude. This is a really good pillar room by Kaos right now.
Phenomenal pillar room by Kaos here. Throwing his third, fourth, and fifth fireballs at that final pillar.
Oh my god, dude. That was... He's smiling right there. This is one of the best pillar rooms I've seen in a race.
Stuff.
Very great stuff, and he's going to be able to get that 100 time.
Easy. Absolutely crushed the 100. And if not for timing or for some mistakes in that Bowser's Kingdom, we could be looking at something like a 100 0x pace, but instead Kaos is going to be getting a 100.23 as the final time.
Winning his first race here at PACE, and we'll see what points he will exactly get, but that is one of the strongest starts possible in this game.
Yeah, he's got to be feeling really happy about that first victory. You know, really flexing the consistency. We've been talking a little bit about how, you know, playing in a live setting and playing in front of some people and with all of this pressure on, how that's going to kind of affect how these guys play, but Kaos showing no signs of slowing down at all.
Absolutely not. And let's see how LilKirbs is going to be able to finish this run. He gets it to D-skip just fine. He obviously, hopefully, is going for... I mean, he's definitely going for the early pillar to be able to get the best time that he can possibly get to gain access to as many points as possible. And then we can actually see how that's going to affect the point total. We will obviously update you guys all throughout that group stage with these bracket graphics, so you can see how this bracket is looking like, because obviously these top two guys will be playing in a big grand finals best of 3 to decide the winner of PACE 2019. But let's look at the pillar room.
That first fireball kind of errant, kind of going off in its own direction, but he's going to throw an extra one just for safety, and he is going to be able to nail that first fast pillar.
Very nicely done. Not going for the 2 quick snipes that Kaos was able to show up pretty crazily. He's going to be shooting a little bit of extra fireballs, but does get the pillar to fall before even having to claw onto there. Shoots a couple extra ones now to get that last pillar to fall, and is about to finish this one off with a pretty low 102. We might be looking to see around like a 2-minute lead here from Kaos, which is crazy, but LilKirbs still hanging in there, getting the points that he can get, and we are looking actually at a 102 1x, I'd even say.
Maybe just sneaking underneath the radar there. But yeah, just underneath, 2 minutes difference between these runners. Give them a round of applause. Very, very solid race showing from both of these guys. And, you know, I think maybe this first race is the race that some of these guys need to get the jitters out, and that might just be what happened with LilKirbs here. But, you know, Kaos's consistency absolutely phenomenal in this very first showing. Yeah.
Pretty good stuff. Kaos gonna be getting another 11 points off of this one on top of the 60 he got. So LilKirbs is gonna be getting 19.
That is correct. If the math is correct there, I think somewhere in the ballpark of that. And we're gonna have Chaospringle himself join us for a little bit of an interview.
I can't believe we are gonna have Chaospringle over here. Oh my
Chaospringle is sitting next to me right now.
I mean, this guy just got a 100.23. Do you realize that? And he's like sitting next to you.
Just casually, in front of a bunch of people.
Crazy.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Kaos, you were able to win that first match, and you got an amazing time. Also, what the hell was this pillar room? But how do you feel?
I don't know. Pillar room has just been popping today.
It really was.
It absolutely has. The third pillar, those 2 fireballs right away, and just nailing the line on those.
I don't know what moon that was. It might have been like a, I don't know.
That must have been pretty low with that pillar room. But yeah, tell me, how did it feel? I mean, you seemed pretty confident looking at the numbers, but did it feel, I mean, I'm assuming it felt different playing up there than when you play at home, right?
I don't know. I felt like I was like more focused.
Actually, like in the zone? That's interesting.
It's crazy. I don't know. Just because it was like sound canceling and
yeah. Okay, I guess that's
totally in the game.
I like it better than racing at home, to be honest. It's actually sick.
Yeah,
there you go.
I guess you get some extra adrenaline, and I mean, people definitely popped off and enjoyed you going for all of the strats and even getting them in a setting like this. Now, obviously, actually, you got to tell me who's your next opponent. Do you know that right now?
I don't know.
We will have to double check on that.
Commentators obviously being
we're doing our job, you know, as fantastically as we can be.
Yep, Kaos definitely going to be racing someone in the next one. Actually, as far as I know, you are going to be racing Stravos. I think that's what he said, if I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think it's Stravos versus Chaospringle in the next round, and then for the final day, it's going to be Kaos versus Nick, which is definitely an anticipated match.
So out of those 2 matchups that you have remaining, which one of those makes you more nervous?
I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea.
I mean, it's fair to say, because obviously everybody is going to be playing slightly different, and it's just a different setting. So I mean, it would be a different win at home, you know.
Absolutely, a very good point.
Nick hasn't been like streaming or anything, so I have no clue how good he is. And Strav, I mean, Strav's been playing, but I don't know. We'll see.
We get a glimpse at that right now, because obviously we will be seeing Nick versus Stravos pretty much immediately.
That's right. It's very important to note that like it's very hard to tell how these guys are going to play in this live setting, but as far as Kaos is concerned, he's popping off, so he's good to go.
But actually, like just one more like casual point that I was going to get into. How is it to actually meet everybody right now? Because obviously us as like a community, we've only been talking as like in like online chats, but have you been getting the chance to meet everybody yet? Like all of the other Odyssey guys?
Yeah, it's super cool. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think so too. Obviously being able to get everybody at one place, and then while running the game that we love, and also being able to get some extra time to hang out and play some other games. Actually, one more thing that we got to talk about later. I guess the stream might also be interested in this one, but there's rumored to be a patch today, a patch for the game being the 1.3 patch. I guess we got to sit together later on and kind of lap out what this is actually going to do to our speed game, because who knows, maybe it patches in like a huge skip. I mean, it's actually exciting times.
You just never know. It could be the fastest version for the entire game.
Yeah, now keep in mind, we did decide if there was something like that to stay on our 1.0 version.
Very good point.
That is currently most optimal. So if there was like a huge 30-minute skip, we wouldn't be seeing that in these next upcoming days. But I mean, let us know, guys. You can let us know in chat. You can let us know on Twitter. Maybe there's like this huge new skip that you found to push this game to new heights. But I mean, that's going to be it from us right here with the interview from Kaos as we set up for the next round between Nick and Stravos. I'm excited for this one.
That is right. Thank you, Kaos, for joining us. And we're going to take a quick intermission, and we will be right back.